You are now listening to the Project Life podcast, where we take project management concepts and apply them to your everyday life. Broadcasting from the Lone Star State in Austin, Texas, help me welcome your host, Mr. George Lopez.
Hey, what is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Project Life podcast. We are back once again, and I am super excited for this week's guest. She is a international author. She's also a fellow podcaster. She is a former physician assistant, been in the public health sector for many years. Sabrina, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks, George, for having me. And thanks, everyone, for listening in. We know you can be anywhere and you picked us, so we appreciate you.
Yes, we do. We definitely do. Now, Sabrina, I always start with having my guests just give us feel free to give us your background. How'd you get to this point? Where are you from? Give my listeners a little insight on who Sabrina is.
Yes. All right. Let's sharing story time. So I grew up actually in China. I'm only child, a girl, and my parents got divorced early. My mom realized that my personality is way too outgoing. So she moved to the US thinking it will be more accepted here. And all my family members, my cousins, now all male. And in the traditional Asian culture, it's also seen like the men are the one who carry out the family name. They're the one who build businesses, go into leadership position. And I'm supposed to be, I used to do dance, art, like doing all the slew of stuff, right? To keep me busy. And I just thought, well, yeah, those are fun, but why can't I be whoever I want to be? And that really led to when my mom got here, I decided to move over here as well. And then when I was 12 years old, I actually flew here by myself. Oh, wow. At the time, I actually didn't thought much of it, right? Like I have a flight attendant there. You just have different planes and not realizing how far that distance actually is, right? Nowadays, even a direct flight is at least 16 hours. Oof. And I got here. And soon after I got here, my mom got into a car accident, and that kind of forced me to do something. That means I start selling pots of paint, sunglasses every weekend at flea markets to make some living. And that also forced me to really rapidly improve my English speaking skills.
Right.
That go into learning, hey, guess what? Anything can happen anytime in life. You can't just rely on family. You have to think about how do you work hard to get to what you want. So that forced me, really pushed me into getting 2 bachelor degrees, 2 master degrees, and a medical degrees later. I end up in one of the most prestigious heart and lung surgery center in the country and really in the world, because there are international patients flying to us just to see us. Oh, wow. And so that means exactly, people thought I made it, and that I thought I made it, right? If you think about where you need to go. Now, my family had a thought of, well, you're a girl. Why do you have to work that hard? Why do you pick heart and lung surgery as one of the most demanding career? Yeah. And I'm thinking, well, there's just not that many things that intrigues me. But also, I put myself into a spot where I felt like, because I'm in a tough position, I better work at it. I better prove to myself. If I don't do it, nobody else do. Right? And I think that concept is not novel to anyone. It's for all of us in this round of ambitious, never-ending, always-on culture in itself, that we feel like if I don't do this, then our controlling tendency, our perfectionist tendency is going to start judging us and criticizing us. So I was to the point working 80 plus hours a week and still have to carry beeper, answer calls at nighttime and rounding on the weekend. And one day, it's hardly 8 o'clock in the morning, I woke up fever of 101 degrees. And my body felt weak and my hands were even cramping. Now, it wouldn't have been so bad, except I'm standing there with my hands inside a patient's open chest, just trying really hard to get through it because our cases typically last at least 4 to 5 hours.
Right.
Now, usually I'm someone who's listened to music, I'm chatting with my supervising physician, my anesthesiology team, nursing, and that day I was quiet. So people thinking, woo, Sabrina's quiet, not a good thing. So one of the nurses even took pity on me and keep passing Dayquil and cough drop under my mask to keep me going.
Oh, wow.
Well, you know, those are just Band-Aids, right? We can take a little medication here and there, and we really don't need an advanced medical degree to tell us your body is forced you to stop.
Right.
And the next morning, I woke up with cold sweat, hardly can get out of bed just to get a glass of water and use the bathroom. Then I had to convince myself, I guess I'm not going in. I can't go in.
Right.
So pick up the phone, call my boss. And his answer was, Sabrina, you didn't thought to tell us this sooner. Now we have to find a replacement. And that was the most ridiculous thing and felt like a stab in my own heart. Right? And I feel like all of us have gone through something similar. We just push until we hit our limit. And other people are thinking, if you can already perform at this level, you better keep going at it, because that's what's expected. And because that's what's expected, you never speak up about what's okay, what's not okay. We keep saying yeses to the things that are really truly robbing our energy, our time, and ultimately our sanity. Then people start getting in the realm of feeling they're stressing out, they're burning out, they're complaining, and getting into this bad cycle. But I believe that we don't truly have a stress management issue. We have a boundary issue and a leadership issue. We stop understanding what's our aim in life. And therefore, we don't know how to lead our own life. And then how could we bring out the best in other people if we have no boundary of leading even our own career? So that's when I kind of hit that moment of realizing, I need to own up to that. I'm the one who's that stone that dropped into the center of the pond that creates this ripple effect of what's happening. We can't just complain about the system doesn't work, no one's helping me. Yes, to some degree, it happens in every single field, but we have to own up to how to allow it to happen to us at that point. So I went back to my root neuroscience and health, where I did my study on stress management, self-efficacy, and self-care. And my research back then, right, more than 10 years ago, was found to be when you believe you can do something, right, self-efficacy, higher self-efficacy, and you did one thing for yourself, that good behavior, instead of focus on multiple, you can actually trickle down multiple good behavior. Right? Instead of us nowadays, we feel like we have to have our hands in multiple pots. Then we feel productive. We're rewarded, right? We're somebody, like we're wearing a busyness like a badge of honor. Right. Instead of, we can be busy doing so many things and never get us to anywhere that we wanted to go. And also learning from other positive psychologists, behaviors, and peak performers to come up with my 6-step system to truly help us, the powerful and ambitious professional, to get back to that, right? Stop turning our passion into a poison. How can we really save at least 8 hours off work and our productivity 30% in days, so we're feel overwhelmed, and or you're gonna feel that undersatisfaction from doing so much work and not seeing the good result that you wanted. And that's where I end up. I start training myself, getting things moving for my clients, and to the point now, I still can work in clinical medicine and start to speak all over the place on TV, conferences, start hosting my show, a podcast show as well for healthcare professionals, because I gone through that. I want to realize, because your life is demanding, you don't want to stuck there. And also recently published a book, started as a #1 bestseller in multiple countries. So yeah, life is just small steps, but you keep compounding into something master and great, and bring the right people along with you.
Man, thank you for that in depth, because and one of the biggest things that I love about the guests that I bring on to show and to tell everyone listening is, hey, I'm bringing on normal people, right? That have put things in place over the course, and their life has gotten them to a point to where either something turned or something clicked. In your case, you're in the medical professional field, and you in that field can almost be a normal person, right? Everyone thinks, oh my God, doctors and people that work in that field, like they can't take a break. They can't, have these ideas of being burned out, but it can happen to anybody. And there's ways to, one, identify it, there's ways to combat it, and there's ways to make sure that it doesn't, creep its way back into our lives. So thank you for that. And again, guys, as I bring everybody on, it's one of those things to where, again, Sabrina is just like you and me. And again, paths have gone down different paths in our lives to get her where she's at. But again, she doesn't have superpowers, but something helped along the way to help realize that something needed to change, and that there was a process that had to come with it. And she figured out what that was. And that's kind of the big, what we push for on this podcast, is to show you different ways to push yourself forward. So, we are going to be, today talking burnout. And I wanted to we've had life coaches talk about burnout, but now I have a medical professional, and we'll touch on those aspects to tell you that this hits you from all kinds of different angles. You could be as ambitious as you want to be, but just make sure that you're prepared, one, mentally, physically, because if you're not at your peak, then as ambitious as your goals are going to be, you're going to run into a roadblock. And Sabrina, so just to kind of start out, what, kind of heard it in your story, but typically, either from a neuroscience perspective or even just within your own professional experience, what tends to lead people to burn out? What tends to be the main cause of someone to finally hit that wall?
I would say there can be a combination of different things. Now, burnout is actually described as a diagnosable disease nowadays, and there's 3 different stages, male and female exhibiting different stages of symptoms. So our first stage is the physical impact. Typically, female will feel the physical impact first, versus the male feels the mental impact, which is the second stage. So the physical impact can be you are constantly exhausted. Doesn't matter if you go on vacation, you had a full night of sleep, and you are constantly having these mental fog, you don't remember things. Or some people have, like me, just getting fever, sick, upper respiratory symptoms, and just never stops, right? It just kind of lives. Like your body just never anything. And in a sense, it makes so much sense in a way of we sleep. When we are resting, the second stage of sleep, the REM sleep, actually our immunity kicks in. So if we don't allow ourselves to reset and just keep going nonstop, that's why our body couldn't even heal, because it takes so much energy to heal itself. Now, the second stage, it becomes that mental thing where people start complaining. No one helps me. Everybody else has fall. I have to do all this. Become super cynical, complain, and you can't feel satisfied for anything at all. You can't hardly find joy, right? People don't allow themselves to see any wins, and nevertheless saying anything about empathy toward other people or even toward yourself. I think the biggest issue for all of us is we don't understand how to receive empathy, how to ask for self-help, and then to truly receive, right? And there's a book, Bob Burke, called The Go-Giver. And then the very last law is called the Law of Receptivity. And if you break down psychologically, it makes sense. There are two type of people who couldn't receive help or gift per se. The ones who feel like, I'm so good, I can figure out what do you want from me if you're going to offer me something. And then there's the people on the other spectrum feeling like, well, I'm not good enough. If you give me something, offer me a service, a gift, a help in some way, how would I repay you? Do I have to pay you back with time, energy, effort, money? Do I even gonna come up with that resource to even give it to you, right? Yeah. All the things, you start lowering your self-value. So that's why people don't really practice openly about asking for help and truly believing they deserve to have help. Right. And then the last stage become that serious depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, alcohol, drug abuse. Now, actually, the new study that came end of last year, I actually saw TV news segment on Fox and ABC, that the new average age of burnout in the US is 32 years old. Oh. It's crazy. Yeah?
Yeah. I'm just thinking about myself here. I'm 33, so I was just like, I'm falling right into that statistic. But I could be right. I think I've found myself just over the years being able to cope with it better. But yeah, that that's really mind blowing to know, something like this you would hear about it from your parents, but in their 50s or so on, after working 30 plus years at the same job and so on and so forth. So that's a little shocking to see that, that number could easily been cut down by 20 years in the last 20 years,
Right. And what are you seeing nowadays, especially people who are millennials, like either the older millennial like us with the younger ones, right? Where are the ones who are majority of the workforce, more than 33%?
Right.
And people, you see the trend of switching job left and right. People don't stay in their career like what our parents or grandparents, they stay in there for the whole life because people are not really sure what they want. And there's just too many shiny objects. They dive into something and they haven't really figured out what is this can look like for them. Is that really aligned with what they want out of life? And they already just, I guess I'm just going to try it, right? So much just trying and not having enough experience, because the most common question we're always being asked has been, what do you want to do when you grow up? And even nowadays, professionally, when we meet someone new, it starts saying, hey, what's your name? What do you do? Like the doing part is our identity, right? And something that instead of should be, hey, what's your name? What do you like? What's your interest? Right? And now we're thinking about what your passion is, who you are in a person, not attached to our job title or to the things that we do. And therefore, we don't have enough experience in the workforce yet before we dive into something, right? And I remember even when I was younger, I did a lot of job shadowing, right? Going to different medical subspecialty. Is this going to be for me? What kind of wanted to do and talk to people, but not many people get to have that experience in life. And when we move forward, we have to really think about the ultimate question, and as what I talked to in my book as well. What type of lifestyle would you like and why? And how would it make you feel when you get there? So now it's the three part. Let me say this again. What type of lifestyle you like? Down to the details that you can visualize. What are you willing to compromise? Are you open to work weekends, to travel? Right. Can you be working from home? Do you want to have a family? Do you want to live in the mountains, a city? What kind of car, what kind of house you want, right? All these specific nuances. If we have a bigger picture of how we want to live, then we can reverse engineer to pick the things we love to do and we're really good at, because those two things add into our performance level, right? And then we can talk a little bit about that in a bit on how to create your desire of performance. But once you know that, and now we have to think about, okay, but why do I want to live that way? Right. If we don't have enough a reason we also see this big picture like a dream that we're never able to achieve. There's not enough drive to get there. And once we know our why, now we have to think about the emotion connection, because our limbic part of our brain, we are human. We're driven by emotion, no matter how logical you want it to be, right? And so we have to hit all three parts to create a better side of life. And really, for me, that's my number one step in my 6-step system, to see how can you truly enjoy yourself and feel accomplished and satisfied, and to do whatever you want to do to create the life that you deserve.
No, that's great. And for those listening and watching, it's, I can't say that's I'm hearing myself say this, because in season 1, I talked about things of that sort. But if you could see the underlining theme, guys, of, hey, when we first started the Project Life podcast and we talked about systems and managing life as a project, people laughed and said, hey, you're kind of cynical to think life is just a project. But you have to kind of put some of these concepts into play on your life, on reverse engineering, backwards planning. Like, hey, here's my big thing. Let me start to see what I need to do, start to look at the research on what does it even take to get that, and am I going to even want to put that type of effort in, and then modifying things of that sort. So I love everything that you're saying, Sabrina, because it's something that I've tried to instill into my listeners, that, again, anything is possible, and to give yourself the ability to plan and adjust fire as you need to go. That's going to give yourself the ability to become more successful in actually achieving whatever that goal is. And, as we continue to talk about the burnout and how we got there, but I want to stress too, because I love the breakdown of the 3 phases, but what are some of the impacts that we see as we start to hit those phases, like physically within our body? I know you talked about, it could be something as simple as a fever or cold, just kind of not feeling energized. But what are some of the physical impacts that, as you start to hit these peaks of yourself, do they have on your body and your mind?
Right. So we broke down the 3 stages. The first stage is that physical impact, your exhaustion, you're not functioning. Maybe you want to go work out, but you just couldn't, right? For various reasons that you start creating for yourself. And maybe finally you say, if only I make to the gym. And when we start doing that and we give ourselves way too big a goal, right? Yes, I can go 3 times a week. And then we end up not doing it. And we start feeling bad about ourselves again, feeling like we failed ourselves in that sense. So, and when you start moving on to the second stage, the detriment is when you start criticizing yourself so much and start criticizing and judging other people, it's very difficult for anybody to work with you. And that negativity is transferring to your friends, family, and coworker. People can sense that. I always say, if you need to talk to someone, talk to a coach, a therapist, someone who's a professional to deal with this. If we continue to offload our weight to our family and friends, they're going to think you're just going to be a negative person. Who's going to want to be with someone like that? Right? And they can be very understanding, but how would that impact your relationship? That's when we're saying our key component of life, of 10 of them, right? That mental side, that performance side, that physical, financial, relationship, everything's intertwined, right? And if you are not seeing how important each part is and then how crucial they are, and we buried under the rug, eventually they will come out somehow when you're least prepared. And that's why when people are adding all these stress together, start going to the last phase because they never have really sought help or have gone through it enough to get over the hump. So that's why I believe that once you identify how you want to live, the bigger goals of why and what you feel, and then we can at least have a clear internal compass to guide us, and knowing the path might be different, but at least I can decide when to say yes, when to say no. Now I know an end goal, right? Be flexible with your path and enjoy the path that you take. And that matches the second that I usually say, how do we regenerate endless momentum? Is knowing the big goal is not about hitting it at some point of your life. Like when you get a MBA per se, right? If I get an MBA, then I can become a big leader and create a business that I want. No, if we constantly in the if then state, you're just chasing something. And once you get to that goal, then what, right?
Yes.
Are you going to be like, oh, I'm done, I'm satisfied? No one can say that. And then you're going to start chasing something else, feeling the life is not enough. So we have to create these small and doable and measurable steps and feeling good when we're doing these things and not forcing yourself to do things that you are just not able to do or feeling like you have to, right? Then we have to play into our third part is mastering our psychology. Now, positive psychology, we talked about success has two major parts, are your intelligence, right? Your EQ, your IQ, your knowledge base, all the degrees, experience, right? But dumping information in like all, oh, I'm reading all the books. I'm like, great. How are you acting those knowledge for applying? Don't be someone who's so obsessive about learning, but don't even know what to apply and how to apply.
Right.
Because the second part is what? Our emotion is having roller coaster. Even you got a big promotion, you got a big client. How long did that happiness last for all of you, right? Most people tell me is hours or even days, never really for month even.
Right.
So it's not the case. Why is it happening? Because we have 9 sabotaging behaviors. Number one, we even mentioned before, is judgment. And then it's probably for a lot of us who are ambitional, it's going to be controlling, professionalism, and hypervigilant. We feel like we constantly have to be doing something. Otherwise, we're not productive, right? All these lies were created. And then even you recognize these tendencies, they're not enough. We have to neural remodulate, pivot ourselves in empowerment state. Means we have to learn how to give and give empathy, how to ignite yourself to actually do things so you don't procrastinate, how to be creative and think outside the box, right? So all these things has to be transferable. And if we're just on the empowerment state, we're like so happy all the time. That's also not realistic because your sabotaging tendency is like, what are you doing? You're not going to be able to do that, and drop you right back down, right? So that's really the first major parts, knowing what we want, be able to continue to grow in this passion, in this drive that you have, and remove things that are not working for you.
No, that's awesome, because the more you start to think about it, the more you start to see it, and that leads kind of into my next question before we jump into your system is, some of the signs that we've talked about, they may seem normal, right? I'm tired, depending on what time of the year it is, I can see, be a little cold, something in the air. We're in Texas, there's cedar allergies, things of that sort. What are, at least for the listeners, what are some key signs that, hey, you're really going down that path, and you may want to take a look at, do some self-reflection, and it may not just be a common cold, or you may only got 6 hours of sleep and you're feeling sluggish. What are some of those signs that, hey, we're starting to head into that path?
I think that's a really good question. I don't think people should looking for certain signs. Self-reflection needs to be done on a weekly basis. That's what I do with all my clients. And some of them are really high performing and they still do the same thing as those who are not there at all, right? There's no excuse. Actually, most people who are overwhelmed and then on the path of burnout don't recognize these signs because we're in denial most of the time, right? We have that avoidance tendency of, I don't think so. I'm good. I'm managing myself. I have a planner. I'm writing my journals. I time block. Right? People think these superficial tools as those are the system that are keeping their life together, but not seeing how everything start falling apart, right? So the first step is just recognizing, is what you're doing getting what you out of life in the pace and speed that you want it, right? There's also an equation by Brendon Burchard, one of my coach on high performance. We talk about anything that you do, your input should be less than your output, right? So stop thinking about chasing about the science, because remembering those things is also going to be difficult. But we can have a system way, just live life. Every week, reflect on 3 things that truly represent you are, your values. And then anything that do not align with your ultimate 3, guess what? They're eliminated. You already determined how you want to show up or what you want it to be. Then you don't even have to be in the stage of fight, fly, and freeze. If we haven't determined that, then our mind has to go crazy on what I have to do, because I'm not prepared. Right? So the true equation then becomes your input of anything that you do based on time, intrinsic value, energy, money, and ultimately sanity, right? All 5 of them need to be minimal. So what about output? Most people think output is ROI, right? If I invest in something, that it better get me some monetary result. Not necessarily. And beyond that, anything that you do should give you aligned to your future value, right? So if you're already doing something you don't feel like your sanity is keeping up, you're investing way too much time and money, and it's now aligned with your top 3 value system, why are you doing that, right? And also your outcome, even though you might be making a lot of return, but is that really aligned with your future value? How you want it to be, where you want it to go in life, and what else? What is your lifestyle going to be, right? What are you really giving up and compromising? But what about the 4th one? How are you growing? Because in all of us, if we lost the sign of novelty and growth, that's when we stop the momentum. That's when we start feeling bored. That's when we start feeling dissatisfied. So don't think about as specific signs. You should recognize your body if you're constantly checking in with yourself. I always use this as an example. So for all of us, right, you can take out your phone. You probably can tell me exactly how much battery is left on your phone, correct? Right? You probably found it within the first 5 seconds. But do you have a dial in your own body to realize your energy? How are we measuring that? Well, that you're pushing through, because we never ourselves to stop anything at all. Now that go into even my next step is thinking about these energies. Like there are actually 4 energy cycles by the sleep doctor, Dr. Michael Burns. We have the typical lions are what most people know as early birds, right? They get up at 4 a.m. Most things are already done by like you, right? 8 and 9 in the morning, while the rest of people are just starting to get out of bed, right? And majority of the population, about 85% of us, are the midday people, and we're bears. We get up like really comfortably 8 or 9. Peak performance hours are gonna be the late morning, right? Like your 10 to 12. And then afternoon start going down. Now then there's the night owls, which are the wolves. So they probably get up middle of the day. Their peak hours like late afternoon to evening. And then their 4th one, people who has the insomnias, they're dolphins. They just can't get themselves to the right spot. But if we, especially people who has some kind of control in their own schedule in some level, then you should identify the peak performance 2 hours a block that you're most alert and do the most productive work during those hours by yourself and time yourself. So neurologically speaking, our concentration really lasts about 20 to 30 minutes. If you go into 60 minutes, it's already stretching out, right? So sometimes I ask people, hey, How about you block out your calendar for 25 minutes? Once it rings, non-negotiable, you just drop anything that you're doing, even though you might be in the middle of a sentence. Okay. And you're going to take a really quick break. And what I teach people about 2 minutes, reset your focus. It can be as that fast if you're incorporating your breath, your body posture, and you refocus your senses into either taste, touch, smell, hearing. And then you can reset yourself, get rid of the mental chatters, right? The craziness, and you reboot yourself to the next thing. And then you can go for the next half hour, 25 minutes, right? And then when our energy is down, how do we draw energy? Typically it's chatting, conference call, meeting, or working out, right? So you plan things when you have a down energy to do the activity that naturally bring you energy. Now we also know there's going to be the introvert, extrovert, but you play with what best for you, right? So that's how we can start remodulating, thinking what will work for me already, and let me shift things around to make best out of us.
No, that's great. And that was going to be my next topic on boosting that energy, because that, as you start to combat, the burnout, that's one thing that you definitely have to do, is try to prioritize your energy and kind of figure out, what needs to be done. But those are great tips, guys. And again, we'll get into some more later on how Sabrina can help you with that. But now getting into, okay, so I got my energy back up. How can I be more productive, and how can I get the most out of my day, so that I can actually start to feel that sense of, hey, I accomplished a lot, even in a short amount of time. Because I know most of us, or most people, will say there's not enough hours in the day, and a lot of times when they go back and look, it's probably because they procrastinated and didn't use their time wisely. But I know you have a system kind of in place to kind of help people become more productive throughout the day. What's that?
Right. Awesome. So we gone through the first 4 steps already. So determine what you want very clearly, regenerating momentum constantly. And then third is master your psychology, right? And master your psychology is mental fitness training. It takes time. And that's why even for me, with my client, we have an app. So you have these 2 minutes exercise throughout the day. And then fourth is noticing where your energy is, realign, figure out where your cycle is, so you can reset and continue to work on your body condition, right?
Right.
And then the fifth thing, now we're talking about efficiency. Now, how do we be more efficient is first identify your desire zone. So we say there's a big pie and we have 4 different pieces, right? Then the top one should be our desire zone, and we spend more than 80% of the time. So what lives in the desire zone are things you're feeling good about, right? You just love to do. This is in my flow. This is my passion. And plus, it has to overlap things you're really good at, right? Things you're really skilled at. People even recognize you. You just oh yeah, I work for this, right? It has to be a night of marriage. Because now what's the other quadrant is in here is things that you might be really loving to do, but you're not good at. And what that means is a hobby, right? Things, and if you continue to chase down that path, you have to spend more time to learn it. Your progress is going to be slower. You're going to feel more frustrated. And guess what that is? Distractions, right? What about this other corner? If you're just really good at something, even people validate you for doing that, and that's why you do it, but you just don't love to do. So with time, you lose momentum. You're not going to want to do anymore. And then therefore, if it's things you're not passionate about and not good at, you definitely have to say no, right? It's elimination. So that's how we can think about a focus funnel. Number 1 step is eliminate. It's not in my value system. It's not something I love to do, and I'm not passion, right? It's eliminate. And then you think about, if it's yes for all 3, can you create a system that will automate this process? The easiest example can be, when you have a lot of meetings, have an online calendar set up. Block out only specific time of the day that based on your energy cycle, right? You will allow people to jump on a call with you. And that means you have these questions even built in, automated reminders. So you don't have to waste time like, oh, so next week at this time block, do you have, right? These things needed to be taken off your plate. Everything should be an automated system. And then if you create automation, delegate. Now, delegation also have to create, right? You have to teach people. You can't be so controlling about little everything, and you can't be so professionalist, feeling like people couldn't do what you can do, right? So that's why we master our psychology first and continue kind of to work on it, right? It's a mental fitness. And once you can have that, to hire the right people to be there to create synergy with you, then we have to think about, is this thing I have to do now if I have to do it? Or is this something I can do later? Now means this thing will produce me time. So how do we produce that? Means this will have a greater impact on the equation we talked about earlier. It gave me a big return on investment. It's really aligned with what I want in the future. It matches my lifestyle and it helped me grow somewhere and keep me interested, excited, right? So then I should be doing this now. And if it's robbing my time, it's just even a quick thing. If it takes you more than 5 minutes, you have to, now what? It's not that important. So then you can put it back on top of the focus funnel for later on. So that's how we truly consider a quick rundown on productivity. And then we can think about, if I have all this, right, then I should be doing things very efficiently with less time and get more done. So once I can get more done, what does that impact? Means I have more time to define what that real habit is I can enjoy on the weekly basis, and how many more hours I can spend with my family, significant other, or go on trips, spend time with my family, right?
Right.
And then the very last step, what we talk about is influence. Because ultimately, all of us wanted to have a personal mission and make impact in life.
Right.
So how do we do that? It's creating influence. Now, there are 5 ways that we can track the right people to us. And then there are 6 ways we're diminishing them. So we need to know, let's not diminish the right people to us. There are going to be time we're just not with the right people. And that's okay. They can be eliminated as well. Don't let the bad negativities stay with you, because that's the transferring energy. You only need the people who are in your corner. You get to know so well of their proficiency and passion, so you can delegate things to them. And therefore, it's a synergistic effect whenever you want to push something through, instead of just screaming on top of my lungs, thinking, I am so excited about this, everyone should join, right?
No, that's great. And those are great tips, because it's again, it's a thinking outside the box method on getting that stuff done. Because, I'm tired of, even when I talk to people, it's like, oh, there's this cookie cutter way to do this. And it's like, no, like, you're different. I'm different. Yeah, that may work for you, but that cookie cutter stuff doesn't necessarily work for me. And asking all these questions and kind of peeling back the layers, you ultimately kind of mold, every client I'm sure that you have, their mold is slightly a bit different. You're asking the same questions, but it's producing different answers out of all them, and helping them realize, okay, yeah, I'm not that person. I'm going to plug this in there because that's what fits for me. And that's what we all have to realize, and that there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, but you need to skin the cat that's going to best fit for you. And you have to ask yourself a lot of tough questions along the way. And the other thing that I preach to people is just, you also have to be honest with yourself, right? And I think, even with your whole system, that you have to be honest with yourself on, hey, I'm really good at this and it may produce me money, but I don't love what I do. I actually hate it. Like, you have to have that conversation with yourself to say, hey, I'm good at programming and I do it and I can make a lot of money, but like, I hate it, but it comes easy for me. Like if you don't have those conversations, it's going to be very hard to, be a peak performer and push yourself to that next level. And is that something that you have to talk to your clients about, on just like, hey, you need to have an honest conversation with me and yourself for us to move forward?
Yeah, I think that's so true. Every single person is very different. That's why we have to cater to your own need. And most of the time, even in my own experience, I had to be honest with myself that we are ultimately is the rock in the pond that creating the ripple effect. If we don't own up to that, right? And then it becomes down the rabbit hole of complaints and feeling like no one helps you, nothing is working out. And that's not a healthy way to live if we can't even recognize, hey, now is the time to stop. The stop is not to say I'm completely relaxed, because if you completely drop everything, it's harder to build that momentum up. It's about when we stopping, regroup, deciding what truly will push us forward, right? Make us actually even more enjoyable, and get rid of things that shouldn't be on our shoulder from the first place.
Right. Now, Sabrina, did I miss step 6, or was that the influence part, or what was step 6?
Yeah, 6 is influence. How do you attract the right people to you, and how accidentally diminishing people? So there's the 6 steps we accidentally diminishing them, and versus when you have the right people to us, right? It's to think about like, oh, if we just have the right people in our corner, how easy would it be to create that team synergy? People have that understanding.
Yeah, most definitely. Now, Sabrina, tell us a little bit more about your program and kind of what you offer, for your coaching clients.
Yeah, I do all one-on-one client coaching. And people can feel free with me if I can add value to you or not. And you can go to sabrinarunbeck.com, my phone name.com/blueprint. So we can see if we can this could be a blueprint for you. Because tailored, as you're saying, everyone's slightly different. So we need to do things that work for you, not learning another model that works for someone else. And that's the key thing about we're unique, we are individual. Let's honor that. Let's highlight everything that has been working well for you, and let's get rid of some things that you shouldn't be paying attention to that are your distractions. And when you hop on our website, you also see a quick 4 minutes video clip from Fox News where I summarize some tips on burnout prevention.
No, that's great. And guys, it will be on our website, right? projectlifepodcast.com, under this episode, along with all of Sabrina's social media and this website. So take advantage of it, guys. We've talked about it before. It gives you the opportunity to ask the questions for yourselves and to be curious about yourself, to see if something like this would one, help you and kind of open up your mind and to ask the questions. Because for me, it's always better to have a third party ask me some hard questions, because then I actually get more out of some of that self-reflection as compared to having a loved one or someone ask those questions. Because again, we tend to have that tendency to say what needs to be said, or want to hold back and things of that sort, because they're family or friends. So definitely take advantage of the offer, guys. Take a look at the blueprint, talk to Sabrina, and just what's the worst thing that can happen other than learning something about yourself. Now, Sabrina, what we talked about the book. What's the book on? Can people find it? Hard copy, e-copy? How can people find the book?
Yeah, the book is called Asian Women Who Boss Up. So this is actually 18 Asian ladies who are from all different fields. I'm the person in medicine. They're also from law, finance, business coaching, life, just even podcasters like us, and also movie producers. So we have all slew of every single individual. Some people even gone through trauma, cancer, and divorce, all kind of stuff. And we can all forge our own path instead of letting things determine who we are. So people can right now go get the ebook at sabrinarunbeck.com/book. And the proceeds right now are all ebook donated to a American professional society, their mental health initiative. Because we know therapy is expensive. And so we wanted to help people out there. And if you like to have a physical copy, it will come out in April. Feel free to just contact me personally, and I will give you a signed copy if you pre-order, and also give you a free 45 minutes of consultation as well.
Awesome. And while we have you here, again, it's going to be on the website, but where can people find you? I know you got the website. Can they find you on social media, IG, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn?
Yeah, pretty much all my handle are just my full name at Sabrina Runbeck. My YouTube is not as active, but it does have some of my podcasts on there. But I am very active on LinkedIn and Instagram.
Oh, awesome. And what's the name of your podcast?
My podcast is called Powerful and Passionate Healthcare Professionals.
There it is, guys. And again, you can find that here, on Spotify, iHeart, all the major platforms there. So again, if you guys need it, the links will be on our website under this show. And we'll make sure that we get you guys everything that you guys need. Sabrina, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the stories. I love it. Thank you for giving my listeners some great information, one, to think about, and two, giving them that offer to sit down with you for a little bit and just talk about, how they can avoid burnout, because it's something that, for me, it's something that doesn't get talked about a lot until it starts to actually impact your actual health. And I know there's ways to, one, identify and combat and to prevent it from happening in the future. So thank you so much for coming on the show. And is there any last bit of advice that you would give out to the listeners before we go?
Thank you for having me, and thanks everyone for listening. I would say the very last thing is you have to say no to just about everything, so then you can say heck yes to the only things that truly light you up in life.
Man, I love it. Sabrina, thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a great rest of the night.